though today it's common to think of God as having no body or parts, this wasn't always the case. Trent quoted several statements from the 3rd century church father Origen that showed that Jews and some Christians at that time believed that God is corporeal. For example, this statement: "The Jews indeed, but also some of our people, supposed that God should be understood as a man, that is, adorned with human members and human appearance. But the philosophers despise these stories as fabulous and formed in the likeness of poetic fictions. If they say you give him the experience of speaking, you will doubtless give him also a mouth and a tongue and the other members with which the function of speaking is performed. But if this be so, one has departed from the invisible and incorporeal God." And they harass our people, joining many similar arguments to these. Okay, so pagan philosophers were mocking Christians for saying God is corporeal and has a form like a human. Now remember, Origen thought God was incorporeal. In the first talk, Trent quoted a lot more from him, in which he acknowledged that the terms philosophers used to express incorporeality aren't found in Jewish and Christian scripture. And as we read just a bit earlier, Origen also acknowledged that if you take the scriptures literally, they say God is a body. The only way he could sustain a belief in an incorporeal God while professing to believe scripture was to argue that it must be read allegorically. Something that's important to be aware of is that Origen's views on this point were controversial in his day. The Christians who believed that God is corporeal weren't just a few nobodies here and there. For example, one such person was Tertullian, an earlier contemporary of Origen, sometimes called the church father of Latin Christianity. So definitely an important guy. "It is written, 'Thou shalt not take God's name in vain.' This for certain is he who, being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal with God." In what form of God? Of course he means in some form, not in none. For who will deny that God is a body, although God is a spirit? For spirit has a bodily substance of its own kind in its own form. So while Origen would soon after promote the idea of God's incorporeality, at this point Tertullian could say, who will deny that God is a body? Obviously thinking that most Christians would agree with him. To him, it was obvious that God is corporeal, since God has substance. And as he put it, all things have one form of simple corporeality, which is the essential quality of substance. And he also said, whatsoever is anything is a body of its kind. Nothing is incorporeal, but that which has no being.